Hello, and welcome to Mean Age Daydream here on the Lions of Liberty Network. I thank you all for joining me on this glorious day. And why is it so glorious today? Well, I'll tell you. It has been a long running pet peeve of mine how abusive the medical association has been, how completely conforming to activist mentality, activist lies, pressure from activist organizations and governments into adopting what has clearly been one of the greatest scandals of at least my lifetime, which is the pushing of young children who do not have the wherewithal to make good decisions and have been lied to by parents, by counselors, and by the media into believing that they have to get trans surgery, which drastically alters not only their physical bodies, but their hormonal makeup, their brain development, their sexual development. Just one of the biggest atrocities I've ever witnessed. And it has been very interesting to see the speed with which this is correcting itself over the past week. So I want to talk about that quite a bit today. We'll also get into Billie Eilish being a insufferable garbage monster at the Grammys, just the laziest stolen land statements that have now, like, maybe, we'll see, might potentially have consequences, which would be delicious and worthy of eating up with a spoon. And we'll also talk about the female urge and, I guess, irrational behavior of empathy for those who do not deserve it, as witnessed by a recent study. So before we get into that, though, guys, I do want to urge you to subscribe. If you like what we're doing here, you can, of course, join the podcast Patreon or the Polit Pricks, as we call them, group over at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And buy my game, Woke Word Wars. You can go to wokewordwars.com or on Amazon. Just type in Woke Word Wars card game. It'll come right up. It's a fun play. It's not expensive. And you would be supporting a game that is hilarious, that makes fun of the left, that is non-conforming, and which, of course, none of the mainstream media will cover because everybody that covers gaming and entertainment is a rabid leftist. So you would be supporting fighting back against the machine. Okay. So as I mentioned, this entire situation with the trans thing has transpired because of something that I've been talking about for quite some time, which is the fact that, and I give myself massive credit for this. I called this years ago. I've been talking about this for years, that you will see a cyclical response to the pressure that has been exerted by the medical establishment, by the Biden administration, by activist groups, by teachers' unions, and everybody else on children, pressuring them into getting life-altering surgeries, right? I had said for quite a long time now, this is a social contagion. This is something that has been passed through, that has been re-emphasized again by medical associations, by the government, by the media, pushing children down a path which they should not be going down. Now, is there a place in this world for people to be trans, to have trans surgeries, to change their gender? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's for the same 1% or less that have always been in that category. And frankly, throughout my entire life, I have not seen anybody that, and again, I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but, a lot of the reports of trans violence were not including the fact that it was trans on trans violence in most of these cases. But the fact that most people still at this point in time look upon the trans community and go, well, you know what? That's weird, but it's not something that they viewed as threatening. It's not something they viewed as a danger to their children, right? It was just an oddity. But that was, of course, during the time period where if you were trans, you still used the same bathroom as your sex. You weren't able to go into a women's prison as a man and rape everybody and impregnate everybody, which has happened time and time again. This is why it gets me so upset when people say that J.K. Rowling is a transphobe, but she isn't. And frankly, John Lithgow is an imbecile. He recently went out talking about J.K. Rowling's views because he's the new Dumbledore in the TV show, which I'm not going to watch just out of principle. But he's the new Dumbledore. and saying somehow J.K. Rowling's views on trans rights is confusing and paradoxical. These are my words, not his, but these are essentially what he was saying. When her views are very simple, women need their own safe spaces. Women need same-sex spaces that are not intrusive and inviting men in there to just come in there who are rapists, who are abusers, having been a victim of abuse herself. It's a very simple, straightforward point of view. Getting back to what's happened recently, though. So this transing of the children, which, as I mentioned, was pushed from a top-down perspective from the government, right? Mandated through government. It was basically pushed through to the extent where you could not speak out against it in the medical establishment, nor in the mental health establishment. You would be ostracized. You would have your medical license revoked. You would have people come after you. You'd have activist right act articles about you. You'd have the New York Times come after you. You would be uncomfortable in public society, right? If you dare to speak out against obvious lies. Obvious lies like the fact that these children have to get this surgery or they're all going to kill themselves, right? This was the number one lie told. Now, the studies that have been done to that have proven that was completely false. In every possible way, completely false. There was also the lie about the number of people who just detransition, which is quite a bit more than people would like to think. Half these people don't even talk about it, and now it's become prevalent because you had all of these people over the past decade and a half telling children they had to get this surgery, telling parents their children would kill themselves if they didn't, convincing children that the cure-all for any ailments that they had, be it depression, be it sadness about their bodily changes, be it uncomfortableness in public, be it a form of autism at times, be it some sort of underlying disorder, whatever it was. The cure was trans, right? Clearly you're in the different body. You need to get your trans surgery going. And this was a $6 billion a year industry. So there is a vested interest in promoting this shit from a medical establishment perspective. So what ends up happening? Oh, that's right. You have all sorts of healthy children that did not need to get this surgery, that were not trans, that were simply going through a transitional period called puberty, wherein you are uncomfortable and you are sad and you are terrified of changes going on in your body. The lawsuits that I predicted would be forthcoming as a generation of children who were medically conned into doing this by the Trans Scammers Association, they would come and be coming for these people's heads. They would file lawsuits and they would win. Well, we're seeing those dominoes fall right now because, and this is the first domino, a $2 million lawsuit award was just given to a young lady who was transitioned, I believe, at is it 13 or 16? Apologies. I tried to pull up this story ahead of time, and the one that I pulled up did not have the details I was looking for, unfortunately. So, but a young lady was just awarded this $2 million settlement for suing the medical establishment, her doctors, for malpractice, for telling her that she had to get the surgery. Otherwise, they told her parents, same thing I'm talking about, that they would kill themselves if she didn't do it. So now she's sued because they told her bad medical advice. She did not need to have these surgeries. She's a perfectly happy, straight teen that now has her breasts been removed. She now has gone through hormonal surgeries that could alter her sexual maturity, her brain chemistry. This will be the first of many. You will see so many lawsuits and so many payouts. Because this is, by the way, a jury award for this. So you're not only seeing the fact that the medical establishment is being forced to pay out for their malfeasance, but also the fact that from a cultural perspective, how we view this issue. Juries are now looking at this and saying, this was obviously wrong. We as a society are wrong in pushing this, and people have to be made right. They'll never be made whole, because you can never get back what was taken away by these demons who pushed the transing of children that were completely healthy kids. You'll never be made whole again. But at least they're getting their just rewards for doing this to children. And honestly, I'd rather see people go to jail as well as being paid out. I want to see these people put into handcuffs and marched into the prisons where they can be treated the exact same way that pedophiles are treated within the prison system. And those of you who are in the know exactly what I mean there without my saying it. So the first domino to fall is this lawsuit. And this was within this past week. Since then, We have seen two major medical associations, which formerly would cast you out if you dared to question the orthodoxy of transing the kids. Well, guess what? First, it was the National Association of Plastic Surgeons, which you'd think pretty important when it comes to changing someone's dick and flipping it inside out or turning a vagina into a penis. Yeah, the plastic surgeons who are chopping off women's breasts, pretty important in this equation. Well, they just came out and said, we are against gender reassignment surgery for children. There is no medical evidence that this is a good thing. Now, guess what? The American Medical Association, that had been all for this just 2 weeks prior. Well, what changes in a week? That's right. Now the AMA knows that they're going to get their tits sewed off, just like they chopped off of all these kids. The AMA said in a statement, the evidence for gender-affirming surgical intervention in minors is insufficient for us to make a definitive statement. The AMA agrees with the American Society of Plastic Surgeons that surgical interventions in minors should be generally deferred to adulthood. The AMA supports evidence-based treatment. So they'll still saying they include, they'll still for some gender-affirming care, other types, but now they don't want to chop up children's bodies. Wow. What a difference a day makes, huh? You are seeing the full-scale collapse of this industry. The shops closed. There's no more free handouts. There's no more buku bucks coming from healthcare insurance companies that are being forced to pay for these massively expensive surgeries that are destroying children's lives. That spigot is off. You're seeing these people tuck their tails and try to cover their asses to pretend that they help somehow. Oh, well, it's just recently that we decided that there wasn't enough evidence. There was never evidence. There was never evidence. To any critically thinking individual, there was never evidence to support this type of action. But it all really fell apart. This is months ago now, when they did the study into the United Kingdom's organization, or like their biggest medical hospital for transing children. They did a deep dive into that and found out that all sorts of protocols weren't being met. All sorts of lies were being told about the children, their outcomes, their medical symptoms, the process for screening these children, which was basically nothing. It was come in and immediately you're trans, go get the surgeries, go get hormones. This is combined with WPATH, which is one of the biggest organizations for trans, protocols in the United States, being exposed as complete scam artists. Again, making up facts and findings, having no evidential basis for any of this garbage. Then you have the undercover reports talking to gender surgeons who basically said, yeah, we're just kind of winging it. We don't really know what we're doing here. We're just kind of going with the flow. These were children. These were children who were abused, just like the ones on Epstein's Island. These were children who were abused by despicable, immoral adults that use them for their own personal gains, their own personal experimentation, their own personal fetishes of medicalization of these kids with absolutely zero benefit for the children. Well, I can't say zero. Like I said, 1% of the population, far less than 1%, actually. Let's less than 1% of the population is truly, as you would define trans. It shot up to almost 9% because of social contagion, because of misdiagnosis, because of pressures from the outside, because of bad parents taking bad advice from evil people. And now you're seeing that trend reverse massively. And it couldn't have happened soon enough. And in fact, it didn't, because it should have happened 10 years ago. And I weep for the number of children that were abused. And I thank God, who I don't really believe in, but I'll thank him anyway. Hey, thank you, buddy. That this is behind us before my children get to the age where it could have been a problem. Okay, let's move on to our next topic of the day, which is Billie Eilish. Yes, thank God the Grammys were there to remind us just how much we should hate celebrities with their anti-ice pins and their down with ice statements, and the worst of the worst, which is Billie Eilish coming up on stage and saying that we are all on stolen land, right? So this was hilarious because the fallout of this has been incredible. Billie Eilish is in violation of a LA tribe, which is like the hold on, let me find the exact name. I've done a terrible job of stacking my tweets to look at here because every single one I've stacked somehow doesn't have the information that I'm trying to find it. So Sinai law firm is using her statement. Okay, here we go. The Tongva, Tongva, Tongva tribe has issued a statement in response to Billie Eilish. Because Billie Eilish, of course, we're all on stolen land. Well, Billie Eilish happens to have like a $5 million mansion sitting in the hills of California on what is ancestral land for the Tonga tribe. And this law firm, which is one of the number one eviction law firms, I guess, in California, called Sinai Law Firm, they have offered to pro bono evict or attempt to evict Billie Eilish from her LA home on pro bono basis because she has said and admitted she lives on stolen land. And that gives the tribe a rightful action for possession as the true owner of the property. And he says, now look, this isn't actually going to be a thing, right? This isn't a real thing. But it would be incredible, right? It would be incredible if some of these celebrities got to the point where, that the stupid things you say actually had consequences that could be enforceable. Because it would be fascinating, right? If a tribe, and this tribe did issue a statement saying that, yes, she's on her ancestral land and that, no, she has not offered to return the property, because of course she hasn't, right? This is all virtue signaling nonsense. Just like when these people, yell about X, Y, and Z, climate change, and then they fly in their private jet, or immigration, and they live in gated communities and martyred where they immediately evict and find any interlopers. These people are all the biggest hypocrites on the face of the planet. Billie Eilish knows that there's nothing that's going to be done, as do all of these asshole celebtards. There's nothing that's going to be done about the stolen land statement. It's the most innocuous, pointless, purposeless, self-indulgent, masturbatory statement you can make, knowing that nothing's going to happen. But God, what a world it would be if this tribe did try to say, hey, you just said you're on stolen land. It's our land. We want it back. We're going to sue you. Now, it will not succeed, right? It will not succeed. And if it did, it would set a horrible precedent for literally everything. But my God, it would be wonderful to see Billie Eilish drugged through the court system. If they deliver this, even though it's like this guy, this Sinai law firm, it's not going to happen. It's an unserious post, but it would be hilarious if they just did it to do it. File the suit, see what happens, drag her into court, make her defend this idiotic statement, or put up or shut up. Either you prove yourself to be a hypocrite in court, or you turn over your land, which we know is not going to happen. It would just be wonderful to see her sit there, struggle with the decision, and be exposed as the fraud she is, along with all these other shit-licking celebrities who just want to go out there and feel good about themselves. Just pathetic. Okay, next thing that's pathetic. Oh, I forgot. Chuck Schumer's rolling out the old Jim Crow assessments again. And once again, it's about voter ID because of the SAVE Act, which is mandating that you have to show ID during elections. So it's amazing. There we go. All land is stolen land. That's right, Jimmy. So during the elections, once again, we see the only states that truly object to having voter ID are the ones that have massive immigration problems that are dominated by blue governance. Now, to me, it makes complete sense that you should have to show ID. And I'm not even that big of a fan of democracy because what you get is a tyranny by the majority. But let's just say, okay, you want to have your local voice. Yes, you should have to show ID. You should have to show who you are. You should have to prove that you are, in fact, a citizen to take part in the elections. If you're paying taxes, if you're being extorted by the government and you're part of the system, well, yes, you should have to show that you are, in fact, taking part in that rather than simply taking advantage of it. So The fact that the SAVE Act has become such a call by the Democrats as a Jim Crow affair showcases several things. Number one, that they are without a doubt engaging in fraud, and they know it. Just like the bills to audit, nonprofit donations that, shockingly, a Minnesota senator opposes and put a counter bill in place to say that you cannot audit governmental money given to nonprofits. Wow. You're really laying it bare there, aren't you? By objecting to investigations into fraud. If you have a bill you're trying to put forth, I think you're admitting your guilt. So, similarly, opposing something this simple and obvious is indicative of the fact that they know there's massive fraud going on. This is the game. They know the game is played. They know that what's going to happen. Now, the second thing is that when you look at Chuck Schumer, like proven liar, fraud, coward, and idiot, Chuck Schumer, rolling out this whole Jim Crow law thing it's number one, it's about the 8th time. And I joked about on Twitter, there's some poor guy who just happens to be named Jim Crow, and he's just turning to his wife. He's like, honey, it's happening again. Every time the Democrats want to gaslight somebody or pull the race card and race bait, the stupider minorities out there. And I'm not saying all minorities are stupid, by the way. I'm saying the only people that fall for it are the stupid factions of minorities. And, of course, stupid Democrats. But to say that this is a Jim Crow issue is insulting to every thinking, functioning minority out there. And this is always pinned on the Black community predominantly. Like somehow Black America is unable to get an ID when they already have IDs. And in fact, 80% of Black Americans are for identification requirements to vote. 80% of America is for identity requirements to vote. And yet the Democrat leadership, because they're protecting this fraudulent voting, is intent on making sure that it doesn't happen. Intent on going against. Again, this is why the Democrats lost the election to Donald Trump last time. God, I have one nose here that's tickling the inside of my nose every time I talk. It's driving me insane. This is why the Democrats lost to Donald Trump the last time, was because they took the wrong side of every single 80-20 issue. Now, right here, they had made some inroads with this ICE thing because ICE's actions can be pointed to, and people are obviously sympathetic to some of these people that are getting thrown out. And the way the media is spinning everything obviously doesn't help ICE and what Trump's trying to do. But every other issue, the Democrats have completely fucked themselves on. I mean, they just talked about the detransitioning of the trans scamming medical complex. The Democrats doubled and quadrupled down on the trans issue. That was an 80-20 issue. It's probably a 90-10 issue. And these people can't read the room. This is yet another issue they're not reading the room on. And it's making them look so unbelievably guilty. And to somehow bring race into it is only further going to distance them from the Black community. They already bled twice as many Black Americans that ever voted for Republican voted for Trump the last time. I can guarantee you that's going to go up from here. Well, maybe not with the snap thing, but I'm sorry, had to happen. You can't be, and by the way, another domino falling. Did you realize that PepsiCo, which had gotten all the benefits of people using their welfare stamps and their food stamps to buy soda and chips and garbage, all of a sudden are being forced to lower the cost of their products by 15%. Curious, isn't it? It's almost as if 15% of their profits was directly coming from us in the form of welfare people buying garbage. And now, magically, they've got to make up that gap. Really interesting how that happens. Anyway, Chuck Schumer's an asshole. Okay, let's talk the last thing here. I have a little clip I'm going to play you a couple minutes of. Now, this is fascinating because we've talked about suicidal empathy on the show previously, and how suicidal empathy is what we're seeing play out with this entire, white liberal women who are pregnant going out there, and just women in general going out there, making asses of themselves, putting themselves in danger, really. And again, I'd said there's something wrong with the way the female brain is wired. And I don't know if this has always been the way or if it's more recent, but the study is confirming it essentially. Misunderstanding the or the prioritizing of what has to go on in their life. Your children, your family comes well before going out there and risking your life and your livelihood and your children, not having a mother anymore, or even, God forbid, bringing your children with you to a violent protest for people that you don't know and who would gladly stomp on your face to save a buck or throw you in a ditch and rob you. These are not the people you need to be stepping out there for. But yet, what we're going to hear from this recent study is that women, as opposed to men, have a problem. And I will say it is a problem with empathy and regulating where that empathy should be pointed. So let me share my screen here. This is from a Brett Weinstein interview. Here we go. Let me share this bad boy for you lovely people and enlarge it. Enhance. All right. Start it up, thing.
Having previously assessed that some people act fairly and some people act unfairly, and having generalized those observations of fair versus unfair behavior to bigger personality traits like agreeableness and likability and even attractiveness, men, when they see fair people experience pain, have a rise in empathy. And when they see unfair people experience pain, do not. Women, when they see fair people experience pain, have a rise in empathy. And when they see unfair people experience pain, they also have a rise in empathy. So that's the big takeaway here, which is that women respond to people experiencing pain or punishment with an empathetic response, regardless of what else they know about that person, regardless of, for instance, whether punishment is justified. Whereas men,
Okay. So there you go. If we're talking about the biggest problem we are having in not only American society, but as a Western society, a Western culture, it is the fact that you've got women like this who are, and that was Dr. Heather. Oh, sorry. Shoot. You know what? Let me give her credit for who that person is. Apologies. Because I don't want to use her voice and not tell you exactly where she was and who she's talking about. But this is the problem: is we see this issue. Heather Heying, Heying, Heather Heying, and it's her study. So this is the issue, though. You're having societies that have people that are coming over that are violent, that are rapists, that are, drug addicts, that are schizophrenic monsters who, and I'm not saying that schizophrenic people are bad at Joe, but you need to be put away. You can't have empathy and just allow these people to roam the streets free. They have to be put somewhere where you're saving society from the violence, from the undermining of civil society, yes, you need to have some rules in society. Otherwise we can't operate. This is like the woman who wrote in, it wasn't the Atlantic, but it was one of these, left-wing publications. I think it was maybe the Guardian. It was over in the UK. She was raped by 6 men, violently raped, did not tell the police because they were migrants and she didn't want to get them in trouble. And she forgives them. You're a psychopath. This is psychopath behavior. Whereas men want the righteous to be rewarded and the evil to be punished, women can't differentiate. I mean, that is a fundamental miswiring, in my opinion. Now, I understand, okay, well, nurturing, probably it's something within the female build, the chemical makeup in the brain, neurological wiring, because they need to feel empathy for their children, even if they have shitty children. And look, I know a lot of people with very shitty children and their parents still have empathy and will defend them and make excuses, right? We all do it. I try not to do it with my kids, but I'm sure I still do it. But, I'm sure my wife does it more because she's wired that way. And we're seeing in this study that women have empathy for people that do not deserve it as a fundamental core of their thought processing. Now, this wasn't as much of a problem until you had women dominating so many of our cultural institutions, of our governmental institutions, of our law institutions. I mean, how many women are now in control of defense, of law, of, oh my God, I think of like the woman sheriff in Philadelphia. I think of all the numerous female sheriffs across all of these blue dominated areas, these cities that have fallen into complete disrepair and anarchy, and not the good kind of anarchy, by the way, the bad kind, where you just have a complete lack of safety, a complete lack of legal enforcement. And it's not like individuals can take the law into their own hands either, because you've got these females running, female judges out there, female, you name it, you got it. That when a person is shot robbing a home, go after the guy that shoots them. I mean, this is the definition of suicidal empathy. And now you are seeing scientifically what is happening. Society cannot function in this way. Bad people have to be punished. You cannot reward the evil. You cannot ignore evil. You cannot forgive people who are violent rapists, taking advantage of the system, making your life, your children, your family, putting them all in danger. You must let people who have a more clear vision of this, and yes, I'm talking about men, dictate certain aspects of society, or you will see a full collapse. And we are seeing that collapse happen because of this exact thing, this exact misallocation of empathy for people who need to be punished, or at the very worst, shouldn't be rewarded for being pieces of shit. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me, guys. Don't forget, buy Woke Word Wars, the greatest, most fun, most hilarious card game out there, which again, I cannot promote anywhere very easily because all of the gaming sites, all of the entertainment sites are run by leftist shitbags. All right, guys. That's it for me, Brian McWilliams from the Lions of Liberty Network and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. We'll talk later.